reflect, discuss, and delve into this month's message from the Masters, October 2018, The Great Reveal. Now, I just love this message that came through because it uses the metaphor of melting snow the whole way through it, which is so beautiful because it really is the promise of a new beginning. As we've heard in the last few months, there's been a shattering that's occurred. There's a completely new platform of experience that we're moving into now with very little reference based on our history. After our shattering and after the loss of a lot of our history, there's been a lot of grief that we experienced throughout September, and a lot of you around the world have contacted me and let me know that you've been experiencing that as well. So it's great to know that we're all sharing in each other's experience of this great letting go. And I always like to see it as a beautiful exhalation of that which we no longer require for our experience. So this month's message, The Great Reveal, is akin to standing in a field of snow and watching it start to melt around us. Now, what is causing the melting? It's actually the radiance of our own consciousness at this time. It's a really important distinction in this message between walking out into the snow and trying to find our way through, trying to find a new pathway, trying to progress on our journeys, perhaps trying to find something that we've been unable to attain, that which we're still seeking to understand. Moving out into great depths of snow is very, very difficult. We can't really see where we're going. We know that we're leaving footprints behind, but how do we know if we're even really progressing? It's difficult to see amongst all of that concealment. The beautiful point of this message, I feel, that the Masters brought through this month is about just staying still and allowing the expansion of our own internal self out into reality, that beautiful radiance of grace and light to actually start to melt the snow around us. In other words, to actually start to thin that veil, the veil of concealment, the veil of separation that has not really enabled us to be able to see clearly our connectivity and our cohesion with each other in humanity and indeed with the planet itself. So as we're able to actually stand still in grace and stand in that beautiful radiance, it's that in itself that is causing the thinning of the veil and hence the revealing of a whole new humanity. And that's what's taking place right now on the planet. Many of you have contacted me in recent weeks saying that you're feeling unmotivated, perhaps a little disillusioned, because you feel as if amongst all this new potential and promise that you should be moving on with enthusiasm and creating new pathways. And yet this message, as we've just heard, is really about having the grace and the ease and the poise to not have to go anywhere, to not have to pursue anything, but to actually be the ignition for change. That in itself is consciousness expanding. In fact, we are consciousness expanding, and the expansion is no longer about moving in a direction. It's about being willing to stand where we are and allow the magnitude of our expanding consciousness to actually reveal the truth of our reality and our one consciousness. I love the example that is given there with the snow, because snow in a way is so attractive, is so glistening, but it completely takes over everything. And it's much like the incumbent reality we've come to find ourselves in here on earth, always about how do we navigate life, how do we get through life, what can we do with life, what can we build with this snow, how can we clear it, how can we learn to live with it, rather than actually understanding that there's so much terrain and so much landscape and so much beautiful synergy that exists between all of us that has been hiding just underneath that layer. So another one of the powerful symbols that came out of this message was the symbol of the mountain. And I believe that this is a really important message that's been given to us this month about having that clear view, Now, having a clear view when the snow starts to melt does not mean having to climb up a mountain so that you can see, having to become very learned so that you can see what's really there, so you can understand the nature of reality. That's really been the premise of our understanding of ascension for so many thousands of years on this planet, that the higher we climb in terms of our own consciousness, in terms of levels of understanding, in terms of initiations, the higher we climb, the more we'll be able to see what is really there. And yet, the power in this message for me personally is that transition in thinking from how high do I need to climb to be able to have a clear view to I am the mountain. I have a clear view just by sitting in my knowingness, being willing to stand still in grace and allowing the view to be revealed to me. And I think that's very poignant for all of us who have been seekers and all of us who are still striving to understand that we no longer have to climb to have a clear view. We have to be very, very sure in our own sense of awareness that if we can sit in grace and we can know that we belong to the earth, that our origin is here, then all is to be revealed. There's also a fantastic, interesting thread that comes through all of this message this month, the Great Reveal, about exposure. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out in our external view of the world. It was mentioned there that perhaps in governmental systems, perhaps in our relationships with others, perhaps even in terms of our own patterns and habits, that much is going to be revealed. And that's all a part of that clear view of life. You can start to see synergies and patterns between things, but you can also see connections that you didn't know were there before. This kind of exposure is also about our own exposure. So it's important as we move through October to be aware and become comfortable with the idea that we're also going to become exposed in this. Because just as we start to see clearly in what's around us, other people will start to see us clearly too. This is a time where this kind of exposure can be really utilized to create new connections and relationships with people, to begin to find people that you feel very resonant with. And I love that phrase that was used during this month's message about gazing lovingly into the eyes of another that appears in your external view. Because of this exposure of ourselves during October, it's also going to be a month where we notice that we are having difficulty editing what we say. We're having difficulty trying to change or control our thoughts or to pare them back. We're also having difficulty trying to subdue any emotional response. So the exposure that's coming from our own selves, remember, it's not necessarily personal. A lot of what's being revealed in our own exposure is highly representative of the exposure of the collective humanity at large. So just be aware if there is anger coming up in you, if there is irritation coming up in you, if there is an intolerance in your words and judgment that's coming out of you. Be really clear not to judge yourself for that, because the exposure that's happening in the melting landscape is also being expressed through you as well. This is not a time for smoothing things over, and it's certainly not a time for sweeping things under the blanket, or shall we say, under the snow. So they're my thoughts and reflections this month for the October 2018 monthly message, The Great Reveal. I'm off to Greece at the end of the week. I'm in the UK at the moment, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to be revealed there. A group of us are going to be traversing through the Greek mountains, and it is my understanding that there will be snow melting and that the earth shall reveal its secrets. Much love to you, and thanks for listening.